Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort are some of the most memorable games on the Wii, and Wii Sports Club was a thing on the Wii U. And while Nintendo has tried to distance themselves from the Wii brand with the Switch, there still seems to be a big demand for another Wii Sports style of game. At least from what I've seen, which, let's be honest, probably means nothing. And while it seems unlikely that Nintendo would make a sequel to Wii Sports on the Switch, now that they've gone in this new direction away from the Wii, these are some of the most successful games of all time, and I do think they could be really successful again. So is there really any chance of a Switch Sports? And would it be a good idea to do one at all? Hello all 1,791 of you, I'm Redkwan, and could there be a Switch Sports? So first, I'm going to run down every reason why it seems unlikely. I honestly think there are some reasons why it might happen, but I do have some serious doubts. And before giving any hope, I'd like to be realistic. Also, I've realized that over the months, my videos have gotten more and more disorganized and lame feeling, so I'm going to try to add in some dramatic section labels, which I'll put in with Windows Movie Maker. Oh yeah, now that's quality. Part 1. The problems. So first, let's get the problems out of the way, and I won't lie, there are quite a few. So let's start with perhaps the biggest problem, the Wii name. Nintendo has tried as hard as they can to distance themselves from the Wii name with the Switch, and honestly, that is probably a pretty big reason why the Switch has done so much better than the Wii U did. I'm not even talking about people thinking the Wii U was just an add-on to the Wii, because I've never heard of anyone who legitimately thought that. What I'm talking about is that the Switch, by shedding the Wii name and Wii image, became a system that's seen as a whole lot cooler than the Wii U was, and I think that coolness has really helped the Switch to get where it is now. There have been some Switch versus Wii U commercial comparisons, and some of the Wii U ones are pretty hard to watch. It's pretty bad. And if Nintendo has gotten so far with the Switch by making it the cool system with all the cool games, it might not be the best idea to make a sequel to the biggest games on the Wii, the console seen by many as the epitome of casual play. These two games seem in a lot of ways like the opposites of the games we'd see on the Switch, and I really don't think they're the type of game Nintendo wants to be releasing right now. And the problems go well beyond that. The Wii Sports games relied heavily on motion controls, and the Switch isn't really the best console for games like that. Sure, there are games that did similar things like 1-2 Switch, and sure, the Switch has some motion control capability, but I think making a major first-party game that's almost entirely dependent on motion controls is pretty much out of the question at this point. With people playing the Switch largely as a handheld, and with the announcement of the Switch Lite, which I can only imagine will become a large portion of the Switch user base, making a game that relies on motion controls seems like a pretty terrible idea. Does a Switch Sports have to be a motion control focused game? Maybe not. But if Nintendo were to make a game like this that they wanted to appeal to the people who liked the Wii Sports games, making it something completely different probably wouldn't be a good idea either. And a big part, if not pretty much the entire reason people enjoyed Wii Sports, was because of the motion controls. Maybe there's a way to make Wii Sports bowling feel fun with buttons and analog sticks, but I think it'd be pretty tough to pull off. There are also some smaller things like the involvement of Miis. Miis aren't really a part of the Switch ecosystem, so who would there be to play the games? Would it just be nothing? These are the questions, people. Part 2. The possibilities. So from that, it doesn't seem terribly likely to me that a Switch Sports or something in that style would be too probable. But as I, maybe foolishly, promised, I do think there are some big possibilities. First and most obviously, they sold pretty well. Wii Sports sold about 80 million units, and Wii Sports Resort was somewhere in the 30 million range, if I remember right. Sure, these games were packed in with the console, but come on, there's no way these things wouldn't have sold tens of millions of copies either way. Maybe that casual market that bought up these types of games on the Wii has largely evaporated. Maybe a similar game on the Switch would be a total flop. You can look at something like Wii Sports Club on the Wii U as proof of that, because honestly, most of the time I completely forget it exists. But Nintendo did that game very strangely indeed. They had it released as a download-only thing, and I don't remember this exactly, but apparently they released a few sports one at a time, and eventually it just became Wii Sports again. So basically, they took a year to slowly release a digital-only version of Wii Sports, which was basically the same, despite the fact that the vast majority of Wii U owners probably had a copy of Wii Sports already, and could play that on the Wii U just as easily. I think that's probably the main thing. And if we forget about Wii Sports Club, which will be no problem at all because I already never remember it, the Wii Sports games have been really successful. And yes, a lot of that market probably has dried up, but I don't think it's gone. I've seen plenty of people who want a Wii Sports type of game on the Switch, and I honestly think a well done one that added some fun new games would actually do pretty darn well. And I'm just being honest here, the Switch is becoming a more casual system. The Switch Lite is coming out now, and so many people own the thing that there can't realistically not be some of that crowd. I don't even think it's necessarily a bad thing. I can probably stop defending myself on this, but just to be sure, remember, the Switch is perfect in every way. The Wii Sports games still have a fairly big fan base of people who would love to see another one, and these things are still great party games even now. I legitimately think a Switch Sports could do surprisingly well. And you know what? This might be a way to get more of the Wii fanbase to come back to the Switch. Maybe that isn't a great thing for current Switch owners, and maybe that isn't even a great thing for Nintendo's brand image in the long term. And maybe that audience is completely gone and only cares about being on their smartphones or whatever. That seems to kind of be the consensus. But I think at least in the short term, Nintendo could get some of those people back, and could sell some more Switches through this. Again, maybe that's a little out of the question, but I think a Switch Sports could be a big deal if Nintendo did it right, by adding in some cool new sports games that were fun and appealing. Part 2A. Why is Wii Sports Resort Basketball the best basketball video game? It's stupid. Speaking of sports games that are fun and appealing, why is Wii Sports Resort Basketball the best basketball video game? This totally has nothing to do with what I'm talking about, but it's so stupid. I've played more basketball video games than I'd care to admit, and you know what? Wii Sports Resort Basketball beats them all by a mile. How is this one of the more forgotten minigames in a game with 12 minigames, which is a pack-in game for the Wii, the peak of basketball video games? I played them all. I played the new ones, the old ones, the pretty bad ones, NBA 2K2, yeah, I've played it. I've played more NBA Playgrounds than anyone in their right mind would play, and none of them are anywhere close to Wii Sports Resort Basketball. Anyways, Part 3. Is it a good idea for Nintendo though, or is it just something that people think would be cool, but would actually be a poor decision from the company's perspective? So is this actually a good idea for Nintendo? On the surface, it seems like a horrible idea. This totally goes against what the Switch has done to become successful, and either you'll market it too much and blow the Switch's cool reputation, or just let it flop like Wii Sports Club. Also, without motion controls, it doesn't seem like it could work nearly as well, so it probably wouldn't be fun in that way, and from all appearances, the people who'd like a game like this up and left a decade ago. But I think there's potential. I think there is still an audience, and quite honestly, a pretty big potential audience, if Nintendo makes something great and markets it well. I could totally see this game being very successful. Yes, the controls could be an issue with the Wii Sports games relying on them so heavily, but Nintendo is pretty phenomenal with getting their games to control well, so I think that could be resolved too. And while making another Wii Sports might damage the Switch's hipness, maybe Nintendo really could find a perfect marketing balance with it, and maybe the Switch has already cemented itself so firmly as a cool and relatable console that a big marketing push for a Switch Sports wouldn't really hurt it. And as Nintendo has shown me with the Switch, it really is all about the money. The Switch is perfect in every way. We all know this. But there have been some things this past year that have shown me that if there's money to be had, Nintendo will find a way. The Switch Lite seemed to me like a terrible idea in terms of marketing, compatibility, and overall functionality. It just seemed really impractical. But there was an audience who wanted it, so Nintendo made it work. Mario Maker on the Switch seemed like something that would be successful, but it seemed like it'd be difficult to get it to work well with the docked Switch. Nintendo went ahead and made that too. These practicality and marketing problems may mean something, but if there's a big sales potential, I don't think Nintendo really cares too much anymore, to be honest. Nintendo can ignore these things if the result has enough upside. The question for me is, does Nintendo think a Switch Sports would have enough upside? And really, I'm not quite sure. I think a Switch Sports would do well, but would it be on the same levels as a Switch Lite or Mario Maker 2? Probably not. Maybe Nintendo doesn't think there's that much of an audience at all. To me, it still seems a little unlikely, with everything holding it back and its potential for sales being pretty questionable, but I also don't think it's impossible. If Nintendo thinks it could be a big enough deal, I don't really think any of these problems here would stop it from happening. I wouldn't guess Nintendo thinks it has that kind of potential, but who am I to say? My last video was literally a fake drop test that everyone was just confused by, so it's not like I have much credibility here. Well, I'm Redkwan. How do you feel about a potential Wii Sports type of game on the Switch? Do you think a Switch Sports would be a good idea? Why is Wii Sports Resort Basketball the best basketball video game? I'm sorry to keep bringing this up, but I find it legitimately upsetting. Anyways, I'm Redkwan, thank you all for watching, and I'll hopefully see you all later. Goodbye.